What's up everybody, you're watching Model Aviator, I'm Adam, and this week we have a new release announcement from HobbyKing. But before we get to that, we need to talk about a big announcement from HobbyKing. In the last year or so, we've all noticed that a lot of things have been out of stock. The shipping cost to certain parts of the world has been really high, and they haven't really been coming out with much new. Well, they're under new management. They retained Stuart Warren as the man in charge of the RC Air stuff, which I think is a great move on their part, and they are getting things done. They've opened up some new warehouses. The US and international warehouses remain. They've opened up a UK and a European warehouse, so that is going to square away the shipping cost to those parts of the world. All these warehouses are being inundated with new fresh stock, so they've got a lot more things in stock for you to go check out, and they are working on a lot of new projects. I'm told that 2024 is going to be a great year for HobbyKing, and this right here in 2023 is the first of a lot of new things you're going to see. This is the Durafly Auto-G2 V2. The original Durafly Auto-G broke new ground in the hobby industry as the first gyrocopter ever offered as a plug-and-play. They made it easy for us. Then came the Auto-G2. This added an auto start or auto spool up of the main rotor blades to the mix. Now we have the Auto-G2 V2, and this model has a lot of improvements that we'll go over after we get it together. But first, for those that don't know, what the heck is a gyrocopter and how does it work? This is going to be quick and dirty, so it doesn't take too long to explain, but you'll get the basic gist of it. Gyrocopter is similar to an airplane and a helicopter in a lot of ways. The forward motion of the gyrocopter presents airflow to the main rotor blades and causes them to spin. Think of those main rotor blades as your wing. They generate lift in much the same way that a glider's wing does by changing the angle of the air as the air moves upward and backward relative to the rotor blade. The free-spinning blades turn by auto rotation. The rotor blades are angled so that they not only give lift, but the angle of the blades causes the lift to accelerate the blade's rotation rate until the rotor turns at a stable speed with the drag force and the thrust force in balance. The controls are going to be similar to what you're used to, but different enough to be a new and interesting challenge. When you move your aileron gimbal, that is going to control the angle right to left of the main rotor blade or wing. That will control the bank angle in much the same way that ailerons do. However, turning requires coordination, and the rudder is going to be the main component in turning a gyrocopter. The elevator works exactly the way the elevator does in an airplane, but not exactly the same way. It does control pitch, however, altitude has a lot to do with the speed at the time and the power setting, so you have to kind of coordinate those things to change altitude. It sounds complicated, and certainly this is not something for a beginning RC pilot, but it's a lot more intuitive than you think it's going to be once you start doing it. So now that we know what we're dealing with, let's get this thing together. It comes with a quick setup guide. Durafly sends this with a lot of their airplanes. It has the usual information. You've got some specs. It has control throws, rates, expo, balance point, suggested battery, things like that. There is a code that you can scan to get the online manual. When we put ours together, we just kind of had to figure it out. The manual wasn't available yet. It is now. I've taken a look at it, and rather than show you pictures of our assembly, which we kind of boned a couple of things not having the manual. We figured it out, but it took us a lot longer than it will take you. We're going to show you some excerpts from the manual because it is so well done. It has vivid color pictures and very, very detailed instructions on all the steps. Makes things very easy. This is a bit more of an entailed assembly than your 10-minute throw the parts up in the air and they land together that some of you may be used to, but it's certainly not hard. The two things that we want to key on primarily is to put your gear on before you try to plug up your ESC to the motor. That comes unplugged because if it is plugged up, you can't get the gear on. Easy way to do that is to pull the motor wires out of the front for the motor and then plug them up there where you can get your hands on them. The other thing is to balance those main rotor blades on the head. Once you assemble the head, use a standard prop balancer and make sure that you balance those. We just used clear Scotch tape on the back of the blades to get ours balanced. You get that thing well balanced, this thing is going to fly a lot better. If you don't balance them, it could shake all over the place. And there we have it. A couple of other things relating to the assembly that I wanted to mention. It does come with a little helmet that you can actually glue right here on the hatch if you want to, and you can paint that. I've got another idea for a pilot, so I'm going to do something a little different, so we left that off. The other thing is, in the instructions they tell you to either use silicone or some kind of oil to oil the wheels. When I put those wheels on the axles, they were very, very tight, and oil would have made a little bit of a difference, but what really made the difference for us, I took a 3mm drill bit and drilled those out, and now they fit the axles absolutely perfect. There's no wobble, and they spin super free, so I recommend doing that for sure. The Auto-G2 V2 is 31.3 inches long, 15.43 inches high. The main rotor diameter is 32.3 inches. Our example weighs 1 pound, 10.4 ounces, ready to fly with a recommended size battery. It has a Durafly 20 amp brushless ESC and 800 kV brushless motor, 4 9-gram servos. It's meant for use with a 5+ channel transmitter and 3-cell 1300 milliamp batteries. The G2 V2 has a lot of upgrades and features that previous models didn't have. A couple things that it retains from the G2. You still have the convenient hatch so that you can get to your rudder and elevator servo, and it also retains the auto start or auto main rotor spool up. That is essentially a brushed motor and speed control that you plug into an extra channel in your receiver. You assign that to an on-off toggle switch on your transmitter, and it's as simple as that. It's either on or off. You'll notice that the main rotor blades have been updated a bit. They're kind of an updated design. They look a little sharper, a little more modern. The head has been greatly upgraded. It is made of a new kind of plastic nylon fiber material. It's got a little bit of flexibility to it, but it's a lot stronger. It balances better, so you have a lot less vibration. You can get almost no vibration if you balance this properly. And if you have a bad blade strike, it's going to break just the blade rather than the blade and the head like before. So that's nice. Moving on down, you'll notice that the servos that control the rotor head for bank angle are now carbon reinforced, so those don't bend very easily at all. And you'll notice it's got a very nice looking aerodynamic fairing that you can also add some paint to, so it's not only more aerodynamic, but it looks better. The paint job is inspired by a Tundra, by the way. Some of you probably picked up on that. I think it looks good. When you get to the hatch, there's a bit more room for your battery. Still kind of compact in there, to be honest, but they have made the electronics a bit smaller, and you have a little bit more room back here to just kind of stuff your receiver back there. It is a plug and play, by the way, so you are going to have to pick a receiver. We used a non-stabilized receiver, so we could literally just push it back there in the wires. It's not even mounted, but it's not going anywhere, and when you put the battery in there, it can't really move. I don't know if stabilization will work for a gyrocopter in the same way that it does an airplane, but for what it's worth, we don't have it, and it doesn't appear to need it. So you do have a bit more room for your battery of choice there. And of course, you've got the helmet, the little pilot. If you want to put him in there, you can paint him up if you want, or you can do something else like we're going to do, but it's part of it. You also have a cowling now, so the whole thing is just a bit more streamlined, a bit more refined, just a bit sharper looking. It definitely is an improvement over the previous model. Finally, the landing gear is a huge improvement. The old landing gear, I'm told, was very flimsy. Looking at some videos of the old Auto-G and then the G2, those things were wobbly. You could turn those things over taxiing in a heartbeat. You don't have that problem with this. It's got the big bush tires from the Bush Mule, which gives me some ideas for our next bush flying video, but just saying, that's a very, very big improvement. They're very, very rugged, very, very tough, and I think people are going to like the ground handling of this thing much better than the previous models for sure. And that pretty much sums up the improvements of the G2 V2. So now it's time to get to the fun part, time to get to the flying, and the Auto-G2 V2 is different. It really is. It flies differently. It's a neat experience that I was really excited about because I've never done this. I am no autogyro expert. This is literally the first one I've ever flown in more than 40 years of being in this hobby, so that was really exciting and new for me. but I have to get humble and tell you that I'm not an expert. I will be able to fly this thing better than you're going to see me fly it once I get more stick time on it, and I will be able to give you a better setup at some point. Right now, what I'm going to do is defer to this. We will do our standard setup page right before the flying like we always do, but it's basically some of the information that we give you that's not here, and pretty much this. This is what you need to start with and kind of work from there. Obviously, setup happens through flying. This is just a start to get you in the air, and we're not done yet. There's more I've got to do with the setup once I get this thing figured out a little better and I know more about what I'm doing, and then I can give you a better setup than I could today. Now, when it comes to flying this, because it's different, the instruction manual online has a lot of instruction. It's very thorough, it's very good. I suggest you read that. I also suggest that you watch Stuart's video from HobbyKing on the Auto-G2 V2, because he gives you some instruction on video and then shows you that working. That's what I watched. I did what Stuart said, and you'll see that it worked for me. So while I'm not an expert, I had a decent first day because I listened to him, and I suggest that you do too. So setup page is next. Check out the flying. We'll meet you back here and we'll give you our final thoughts. Enjoy. This is the auto start feature. The idea is, once you get it in the air, to flip that off. The forward motion and auto rotation keeps the main blades turning and making lift. I've made a couple of changes, not that I know what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to change the way a few things feel for me personally, and we'll give it another go.
That is a weird looking thing.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Heidi had never even seen a gyrocopter at this point, so this one took her a bit by surprise. It is weird, but it's cool. that new gear may have saved my bacon on that one. At this point, I'm just trying to get a feel for it, get past the little bit of nerves that I have, which is a rarity for me, which makes this even cooler. Doing a lot of takeoffs and landings to try to make sure that I've got that down pat. As you can see, you can get it pretty slow. Once I really figure out what I'm doing a little better, I'll be able to maintain that and do slow passes and maybe some bush flying. It certainly taxis really well, and it feels very stable with the new wide gear. One thing worth mentioning, the top piece of the rotor head screws on and off the shaft. That's what holds the rotor on, so removing the rotor for storage and transport is very easy. Takeoff on this flight was my best yet, and I even had enough confidence to try a hammerhead. Not bad. And there you have it. I have to say, I haven't had a challenge like that flying RC ever. And it's not that it's overtly hard or impossible to learn or anything like that. Quite to the contrary, it was actually a little bit easier than I thought, but at the same time, I didn't just pick it up and become an expert in 10 minutes with it. You know, it's cool. I like things like that. I embrace things that are different. HobbyKing's kind of known for that. They will throw some wild pitches and try some crazy stuff sometimes, and they've proven, because there has been a G2 and now a G2 V2, that there is a market for gyrocopters in RC. People dig these things. Clearly, I can't speak to a direct comparison to the older versions of this and say that all these improvements are spectacular and they do a whole lot for it, because I have no experience with that. What I can tell you is, being a novice gyrocopter pilot, you look at some of my landings, I can at least attest to the fact that this big old wide gear helped me out a lot. I'm sure, looking at videos from the older ones, that with that gear on some of my landings, I would have turned this thing over, probably broken a blade or two. And speaking of that, HobbyKing recommends that when you order this thing, especially if you're a new gyrocopter pilot, that you order some extra blades. Again, it's not that it's that hard. It's not for a novice. Clearly, I think some intermediate pilots will be fine with it if you're one of those intermediate pilots that has learned how to coordinate your turns and you are happy and comfortable using that thing. If you are good with rudder and you know how to do rudder turns, then you absolutely can learn to fly this. It's not going to be that difficult for you. If you don't know how to coordinate turns, I suggest you learn with an airplane before you tackle this, or buy 10 sets of rotor blades, because you're probably going to need them. So it is not that hard, but it's also not that easy, which is cool. It's a different skill set, and I embrace things in the hangar that don't fly like everything else, and this is absolutely it. I can't wait to get better with this thing. I've got some extra blades coming, because I'm going to take some more risks, get a little better with this thing, and we're going to put this thing in one of our bush flying videos and maybe do some other things with it. It's just a neat piece. It's different, it's unique, and I think we can make some good content with this in the future once I master it. So I'm looking forward to that. So if you're looking for something different in your hangar, the price point of this thing, very, very fair for what you get and the experience that it gives you, which again is not going to be like anything that you've experienced before, which is very, very cool. We'll put a link in the description where you can pick one of these up. We'll put a link to the receiver that we used. Happy flying. Hope you enjoyed this. Very, very cool. Don't forget to watch Stuart's video, especially if you plan on getting one of these and learning to fly a gyrocopter for the first time. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next week with something cool, with wings or rotor blades, something. We'll see you next week with something. Take it easy.